Okay, enough of this silence. How was this silence like? You all felt something, and this is what silence is all about. I wrote my first poem when I was 6 years old, and I found no words to say what I wanted to say. But since then, I have been very passionate about the power of silence. So, what happens in silence room? Silence has a very wide spectrum. It can relate to meditation, communication, trauma. Silence is so present in our daily life that we tend to forget about it. Language has been the main sailing boat for psychology to study feelings and emotions. We love doing interviews and surveys. However, all of us here know how hard it is to put certain feelings into words. We all have struggled with this, and this can create a lot of tension. So that means that sometimes silence and language show us different landscapes. And the arts are this submarine that dives deeper into emotions and feelings. The arts are an intersection point between silence and language. Now, imagine you arrive to a university class, and then no one talks there. All the class, including the teacher, are sitting in silence. They are looking at some art about silence, and then they write poems about it. I was the teacher, by the way. And one morning, we watched a video of 4:33 of John Cage, where he sits to look at a piano in silence, a concert without sounds. And one of my students wrote on her diary, I felt disappointed that I didn't hear anything, and now I had to think about my own stuff. I'm analyzing the diaries of my students and writing a theory about silence and emotion. My premise, silence is not an empty space. Silence is a room for emotional experience. And I'm bringing some of this artistic knowledge into the puzzle of psychology. I use theories of art in the theory I'm writing. I also use songs, videos, poems about silence in class, and I encourage my students to use poetry in their diaries. Because indeed, poetry is the most musical part of language. So think of musical scores. These red marks highlight the signs for silence in a composition. As in musical scores, we make use of silences every single day. Silence is about contrast. So that means that silence can be disappointed, but also helpful at the same time. As the lines in a musical score, our emotions work within layers. So when we are experiencing silence, there are different parts of ourselves active at the same time. The little part of us who wants to enjoy good music, the little part of us who wants to ignore our thoughts, the little part of us who has no clue of what is going on, etc. And all these experiences can relate to the same person because our mind is a little society also inside. So we might fear silence, but it can always teach us something, even in its awkwardness. And silence can teach us that it is okay to feel contradictory things at the same time. For instance, these are two signs of silence in the city. And so in the city, we are asked to have roles for silence as well. However, sometimes we don't fit in those roles. That we say a prayer does not mean that we experience silence. And what if we are both worshippers or tourists? Then which door shall we go through? That means that sometimes we are asked to break silence, and sometimes they say that silence is gold. But where is the answer? The question then is, what am I silencing, and what is silencing allowing me to embrace? It would be amazing if we could promote more silences in classrooms, therapeutic settings, work environments, and you know very well about Friluftsliv, by the way. Indeed, my students at class developed community projects to improve quality of life in Trondheim through silence. Silent cafes, community gardens, media campaigns. Unfortunately, we had not enough budget, so we couldn't make those ideas real yet. But what I have done most in my research is that I have been traveling all over the world, teaching psychologists to listen to silence to better understand emotions. And also to ask psychologists, what can we learn from the arts? And to start summing up, I want you to take home what I love the most about my project. And it's that silence can be a helpful resource. We don't need and we cannot put everything into words. So acknowledge silence in your everyday life and embrace the ambivalence that it creates. Is it comfortable? Are you vulnerable? Both. The tension between silence and words is essential for the melody of our emotions. So it is not about breaking silence or the tension of silence. It is all about paying attention to the tension that silence creates. That's where the golden lays. Tusen tack.